Nvidia's graphics cards had a comfortable lead on AMD cards for years, but AMD Radeon RX 6000 series lineup put the two brands in a competition like never before. Both manufacturers are constantly adding new features and updating their graphics architecture in their cards to keep the competition hot. But Nvidia's key features like ray tracing and supersampling have been around for longer, whereas AMD has the lead on frame rates. For now, ultimately, you'll have to decide if you prefer the best frame rates or the best ray tracing. Performance. When it comes to raw performance, both AMD and Nvidia make spectacular graphics cards. For 1080p gaming, you can't go wrong with either company. A mid-tier Nvidia RTX 3060 or AMD RX 6600 XT, for instance, push over 60 frames per second FPS, for example, using Cyberpunk 2077, a graphically demanding game set to the Ultra Graphics preset at that resolution, nets 65 FPS with the RTX 3060 and 70 FPS with the RX 6600 XT. 1440p gaming on Ultra Graphics is a bit tougher on graphics cards, but an upper mid-range card will get you around 60 FPS in Cyberpunk 2077. The Nvidia RTX 3070 squeaks by with 62 FPS, while the AMD RX 6700 XT comes close at 56. Of course, turning the graphics preset down will net you higher frame rates. For 4K and ray tracing performance, Nvidia scores a notable lead over AMD. Let's look at 4K performance first. With the Ultra Graphics preset on, Nvidia's RTX 3080 runs Cyberpunk 2077 at 40 FPS, and the RTX 3070 runs it at 30 FPS. Meanwhile, AMD RX 6800 XT, the 3080's equivalent, runs it at 37 FPS, and the RX 6700 XT tops out at 25 FPS. AMD and Nvidia take different approaches to software features. While AMD tends to make software that works for all devices, Nvidia tends to lock its software in proprietary systems. However, they're very close in the breadth of features they offer. AMD's most notable enhancements are Fidelity FX Super Resolution, FSR, and FreeSync. With AI algorithms, FSR upscales the image resolution, or it sharpens lower resolution images and then enlarges them rather than natively rendering images at a higher resolution. This results in much higher in-game frame rates. For example, the RX 6800 XT frame rates in Cyberpunk 2077 at 4K Ultra Graphics settings jump from 37 FPS to 91 FPS. Nvidia has similar technology, or what it calls Deep Learning Supersampling, DLSS. It's been around longer than FSR, and in our experience, DLSS consistently produces upscaled images that look more accurate to the original image than FSR. But the frame rate gains are not as extreme as with the RTX 3080. For instance, runs Cyberpunk 2077 at 4K Ultra Graphics settings with DLSS enabled at 58 FPS. For ray tracing, however, Nvidia's DLSS takes the lead over it at 1080p Ultra Graphics with ray tracing enabled in Cyberpunk 2077. FSR boosts the AMD RX 6800 XT frame rate from 38 FPS to 74 FPS. And DLSS boosts the Nvidia RTX 3080's frame rate from 58 FPS to 101 FPS. Compatibility. Both AMD and Nvidia do a good job of ironing out compatibility issues and performance issues for games. It's impossible to declare a winner. Both graphics card drivers break, and break as software gets updated and patched. However, while both GPU manufacturers release consistent firmware updates, software developers do not prioritize both manufacturers. Because more people own Nvidia graphics cards than AMD graphics cards, software developers are more likely to focus on performance for Nvidia graphics cards first. For most software, this doesn't cause issues, but it's important to check compatibility for specific software and applications critical to your productivity. Additionally, professional 3D software like 3ds Max and Maya currently support more Nvidia cards than in Autodesk Maya 2023. For instance, many Nvidia GeForce RTX and GTX cards have worked in testing, but the same cannot be said of the Radeon RX 6. If we're comparing frame rates per dollar, AMD wins. If you don't plan to use ray tracing and you don't see yourself doing much beyond gaming, AMD has a better value depending. For instance, the RTX 3070 gets 10 FPS more than the RX 6700 XT running Cyberpunk 2077. But it's also about $100 more expensive than the RX 6700 XT and 50 cents more per frame. 10 frames are also such a small difference, especially when you factor in how much AMD cards can bump frame rates with FSR turned on. You can get the RX 6700 XT for $400 to $500, while you'll have to pay $500 to $600 for an RTX 3070. For high-end cards, AMD are slightly cheaper. The RTX 3090 Ti we've seen go for as low as $1,100, and the RX 6950 XT as low as $935 at Amazon. Meanwhile, the RTX 3080 goes for about $740, and the RX 6800 XT goes for about $600 on Amazon. That's $1.38 cheaper per frame in Cyberpunk 2077, a 1080 Ultra without ray tracing. On the budget side, the RTX 3050 goes as low as $300, and the RX 6600 for as little as $260, or $1.77 cheaper per frame. Now it's your turn. Which one impresses you the most? Let us know in the comment section below. Also, do share and subscribe to our channel for further video notifications.